On This Week in Enterprise Tech, Comcast and the zettabyte inevitability, Frontier pops a cap in Comcast, and we're talking to Tim Titus from PathSolutions. Twice on the set.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for This Week in Enterprise Tech is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com.
This is Twice. This Week in Enterprise Tech, episode 193, recorded June 10th, 2016. Network Troubleshooting with PathSolutions. This Week in Enterprise Tech is brought to you by Atlassian. Unleash your team's potential with collaborative software tools like HipChat and Jira, which will enable you to work and communicate better together. Visit Atlassian.com to learn more. Welcome to Twice. This Week in Enterprise Tech. It's the show dedicated to the enterprise professional, the IT pro, and the geek who just wants to know how the world is connected. I'm your host, Father Robert Ballasare, the digital Jesuit, your guide to all things in the enterprise. But of course, I'm not going to guide you by myself. I've got my friends with me, starting with Mr. Brian Chi. He is the director of the Advanced Network Computing Laboratory in Honolulu, Hawaii. He's feeling the funk today, folks, so he's at home celebrating the Monarch Day.
Yes, indeed. It is the 100th anniversary of the King Kamehameha Day Parade. And my favorite part are the Pa'u riders, gorgeous women that are a lot of times with royal blood. And they have these gorgeous sleighs and gorgeous dresses, and they ride horses in the Kamehameha Day Parade. It is a spectacular ama.
Okay, that's enough out of you, because all the people out there are just beating themselves because they don't live in Hawaii and they don't see that on a daily basis. So let's go to our other friend, the other co-host of this episode, Mr. Lou Maresca. He is a senior lead at Microsoft. It's so good to see you, Lou. Now, baby, you still okay? You're still versioning?
Great. Yeah, baby's doing great. Baby's doing great. We don't have we have sun today, other than rain, rather than people who want to go to Hawaii. I guess Seattle's a good place today too.
Well, gentlemen, this is going to be a fun episode because not only do we have Tim Titus from PathSolutions on, he's going to be telling us about one of the best tools you can get to manage your network, but we're also going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects, and that is data caps and privacy. But before we get there, you know what we got to do? We got to jump into the blips. Google, Microsoft, IBM, and Facebook are just four of the heavy hitters who have developed deep learning or neural network systems that can process information more like a human brain. Now, we had a newcomer who has actually been doing neural networking way longer than the big boys. This past week, Dan Golden, the former chief at NASA, took the wraps off his startup NewEdge, which has been developing pattern recognition software and hardware for 10 years. The San Diego-based company was secretly funded to the tune of $100 million by angel investors who were told on the onset of the program that it would take 10 years to bear fruit. Early on, the developers realized that traditional processors are a bad match for thinking like a human brain, so they created NewPath, a processor with 256 cores that are connected to each other via a Lambda fabric, also a development, that can network up to 512,000 different devices. NewEdge claims that the cores can act like brain cells, which makes them excel at pattern recognition. Now, in the rollout, they touted the ability of NewPath to pick a single voice out of a noisy environment and use pattern and context recognition to both verify and receive commands from a specific user. The TLDR version, imagine a phone that unlocks with the sound of your voice, can always be listening just to you, and has the ability to figure out what it is that you want, not just what you've asked for. The announcement is currently heavy on the vapor, but if even a few of their claims are mostly true, this could be a huge moment for context-aware processing.
Now, imagine you're in a department store and you're walking around, you walk past products, and it maps your interests and starts providing you contextual deals and additional stock locations. So the future of proximity detection is here with Omnitrail. Omnitrail handles a type of detection called passive presence detection. It uses a lower-powered RF beacon using Broadcom's deep sleep state connectivity solutions to shoot a special header and ID across the conventional to conventional access points. Onboarding to the new technology is as easy as a simple firmware update to the access point to accept the new header values and forward them onto the secure cloud service by Omnitrail. New system is also so low power, it uses only 2% of the phone's battery over a 24-hour usage period of the device. Omnitrail has data supporting its 1.5 meter granularity, but it's working on a separate system that replaces the Wi-Fi component in Broadcom using the Broadcom Hula engine, a hybrid universal location algorithm that uses all the sensors of the device to get sub-meter granularity. Who knows, you might be able to truly track things and people indoors soon enough.
The FAA is warning to expect mysterious GPS outages this month, especially on the west coast of North America. Gizmodo's article is warning of sporadic GPS outages and inaccuracies starting this last Tuesday and progressing through most of this week. So while these outages were announced by the FAA, the charts indicate they're centered on a big Navy testing facility in the Mojave Desert. This could very well be the reality of what the tinfoil hat folks have been saying for years, that the DoD have created and are now testing GPS jamming technology that our military could potentially use as part of our future warfare.
Now, we all know that enterprises have learned to anticipate the trolls, whether it be keeping them from teaching an AI to be racist and sexist, to cleaning comments and forums to keep a civil tone. Unfortunately, sophisticated algorithms and flagging can only stop trolls until they learn how to game the new system. But now one company has a novel approach. Let the people decide. Periscope, a Twitter company, is implementing a flash jury feature in its live streams. Users who are watching a Periscope feed and see an inappropriate comment can flag it, and the system automatically convenes a small group of random users who get to vote on the flag. If a majority of the jury think the comment is inappropriate, it's removed, and the commenter is placed into a timeout. Repeat offenders can be banned permanently. While this approach still leaves much room for abuse and will probably get gamed in short order, there are some who think that this virtual walled garden approach might be just the thing to discourage those who are looking to start fires for the lulz.
If you could walk up to an NCAP advertisement and based on your vitals know how effective it is, or be able to monitor the blood oxygen levels, pulse, and breathing rate of a sensitive beta bee without disturbing it, then you would probably understand why the new tech from Philips is useful. Philips has developed a contactless monitoring system that effectively monitors pulse and breathing rate and blood oxygen levels without touching the body. The pulse and breathing rate is something that's now out today. It's not new, but adding blood oxygen levels adds a significant change to the competitive market. The camera and software system detects minute changes in the skin coloring to acquire pulse and oxygen levels in the blood, and it also uses a small subtle change to the body's movement to determine breathing rate. The technology is still in the research phase, but looks quite promising for both medical and commercial applications.
Well, unfortunately, TeamViewer is scratching their head on just how millions of their user accounts have been compromised. In a statement by Axel Schmidt this last Sunday, TeamViewer acknowledged that the number of takeovers were significant, but they're maintaining that the takeovers are because of weak passwords on the part of their users. However, the takeovers seem to be the source of attackers draining PayPal accounts and takeovers of accounts on LinkedIn, MySpace, and several other social media accounts. The scary part is that TeamViewer does not know how these accounts were compromised, which still leaves the possibility that it was the TeamViewer user database that was compromised and not just a huge number of weak passwords on the part of TeamViewer users.
Cisco just released their 11th annual Visual Network Index. And the big takeaway is that IP traffic will be increasing over the next few years a lot. Cisco estimates that annual global IP traffic will pass the 1 zettabyte mark sometime in 2016 and should hit 2.3 zettabytes by 2020. Now, for those at home, 1 zettabyte is 1,000 exabytes, and 1 exabyte is 1,000 petabytes, and 1 petabyte is 1,000 gigabytes. So this is officially a Doge load of bytes. Other interesting bits from the report: global IP traffic will increase 100-fold from 2015 to 2020. The busiest 60 minutes of internet traffic increased 51% in 2015. Smartphone traffic, which accounted for 8% of global traffic in 2015, will exceed PC traffic by 2020, and by then traffic from wireless and mobile devices will make up 2/3 of all global traffic. Digging down, Cisco expects the biggest percentage increases in traffic and capacity in the Middle East and Africa, reaching 10.9 exabytes per month by 2020. Well, that does it for the blips. Let's go ahead and jump straight into the bytes. This story has, well, it's been waiting for us for quite a while, ever since we started covering net neutrality and what some of the carriers were doing to squeeze a bit more profit out of their customers. We've been wanting to talk about data caps. But let's talk about data caps like IT professionals, because we know that they're an anathema for the liberated, educated internet user. They see them as an attempt by greedy corporate folk to squeeze more profit out of a service that they've already sold, or for a way to curtail you from using the service that you've already paid for. But as IT people, as administrators, as IT techs, even as execs, we understand that some form of network management is usually necessary and almost always isn't for nefarious purpose. So let's have a conversation about data caps for consumers. Now, just a while ago, Frontier Communications was approved to purchase some of Verizon Wireless's wireline divisions. Now, they'd purchased them in 3 states, expanding their market range and their consumer reach. However, while they're trying to compete with larger providers like Comcast, they announced that they have no intention to have Comcast-like caps on data transfers. In fact, Daniel McCarthy, the CEO of Frontier, stated in front of his investors, and I quote, "We want to make sure our product meets the needs of customers for what they want to do, and it doesn't inhibit them or force them to make different decisions about how they're going to use the product." Chibert, I want to throw this over to you first. Here's not a newcomer, but a relative newcomer when you look at size compared to the big players in terms of broadband deployment for consumers. And they're saying, yes, we're going to manage our network, but no, if we sell a customer an unlimited service, we're going to let that customer use unlimited service. Is this just a sort of a jab, a marketing jab at companies like Comcast and AT&T, which have imposed caps? Or is this actually a real network player who's saying, we can do our management without restricting how much data they use?
I personally think this whole thing is about the emperor has a set of new clothes, and the guys at Frontier are basically saying, no, he's wandering around naked. There is no technical need for data caps, especially with the kind of backbones that we're talking about now. So what Frontier is doing is they're throwing a shot across the bow at people like Comcast and Time Warner, especially with the article that broke last couple of days about New York City saying, Time Warner, your broadband capacity, your broadband service is abysmal. Well, I think guys like Frontier are going to start saying, hey, the emperor has no clothes. And I think it's time for, Frontier is basically telling the world the broadband, the wired services need to change. And the Comcast excuse on, oh, we don't have enough backbone is a load of hooey. Don't you agree?
I don't know, because the providers are always very, very secretive about how much capacity they have, both in terms of fiber and routing. So it's difficult for someone who's not actually inside the industry and has access to NDA information to say, oh yeah, no, they need to throttle this. They don't have enough capacity. We could do some quick math and see how many people they've sold the service to, and then combine those pipes. And it sounds like a lot, but we know that a network's never going to run at its max capacity for any given amount of time. Let me throw this over to you, Lou, because again, Chibert's giving us the one side, and I understand Chibert's side. I tend to be on Chibert's side. I always think that this is just a profit move. This is not a management move. What's your take? Do you think that providers have a legitimate excuse to throttle customers once they've hit a monthly cap?
I think they're just trying to milk the old models, right? I think the old models were that you paid per usage, you paid for your speeds, the whole days of the modem size, even the latest speeds with the internet, you're paying for your bandwidth, for your speed. And they want to continue to milk that, because once you open the door for consumers to everything, now you have to find a different model. You have to find a different way to charge more for particular things. You can't just charge at one rate. Frontier has used to have a tiered-based model. Say, hey, you get this, and this speeds, that kind of thing. And they still have that. But again, the same thing is they also used to back in 2008 and in 2011 they used to charge for usage. 5 gigabytes I think was the limit back then. So I think now they have to find a new model for this. So again, the question is, what are they going to do? And so most companies like the Verizons and the AT&Ts, they still Comcast, they still want to milk the old model. And I think they also need to get some more creativity once Frontier kind of takes over the land.
Okay, so it sounds like all three of us are on the same side. We think that the ISPs are being a little bit greedy. We think that customers are getting shafted. We think that there's no real technical reason to cap or throttle the way that they are right now. However, for the purpose of a discussion, I'm going to play devil's advocate. I'm going to be the representative of the telcos here as best as I possibly can. We've got Web9657 in the chat room who is pointing out that Netflix has been saying for a long time that caps and capacity limits are not a real thing. It's not actually necessary. And we've also got Creamy Corncob who pointed out that someone figured out that Netflix's bandwidth testing device was actually kind of playing it fast and loose with the numbers as well. It was trying to make it seem as if ISPs were being the bad guy. So let me step in as Mr. Comcast. I am now Joe Comcast, married to Mary AT&T. And I'm saying, look, I get it. You want free service, but if everyone had all the data that they wanted at the greatest possible speeds, the network would absolutely crumble. Would either of you, as IT folk, argue with that? If every customer used all the bandwidth that they had bought, which would be unlimited under your plan, that network would die, would it not?
Yeah, I agree with that. You know, I've seen what this certain Jesuit priest has done on some of those data caps. And, you know, I will point out, you know, while I want unlimited, Frontier did not close the door. You know, I think what they're, if you read between the lines, is we're going to try this, but if people start serving up porn sites from their home or do things like that, where they're going to suck up an amazing amount of bandwidth, we reserve the right to go put the tiering back into place. So I think this is going to be a case of maybe the general public needs to learn how to behave a little bit before we see this being widespread. Okay, but that's a difficult thing to ask. I would love to do that. Again, as Mr. Comcast and my wife, Mary AT&T, I would love to say, okay, hey, you know what? We're going to open up our network. Just be responsible about how you use bandwidth, because historically we are not responsible about things that we think we are entitled to. Lou, if suddenly Comcast were to say, we're going to give you as much speed as we can possibly deliver, and there is no cap on your bandwidth, I would be running Netflix all day, and because I like having stuff in the background. And that's not a responsible use of bandwidth, especially as a shared resource. But it's that second part, as a shared resource, that we don't seem to understand. How would you educate the public that connection that they bought is not actually their connection? It's a connection shared with millions of others.
Now, you might be exception to rule, because I don't know anybody that would want to maybe run Netflix all day long. But I mean, I guess the question is, would people really change their behavior if that was the case? If they got unlimited, I think most people, I think most of these companies like Comcast bank on the fact that you don't necessarily, you know, there's different behavior usage patterns that people have, and they bank on the fact that you're going to continue that pattern. And my guess is that's where Frontier's coming from. It would be interesting to see their subscriber numbers. It's probably obviously a lot lower than that of the Comcast networks, and so they can honestly say it's kind of like the T-Mobile Unlimited type thing. Is they can do that because they're trying to be competitive. And so Comcast I think is kind of in the same boat. So, you know, to kind of go back to it, I think, you know, if Comcast were to do something like that, education of users, it's tough because, like you said, you're always going to have the user that's going to want to do whatever they want, right? I think you're going to have the users that will abuse it. You're going to have the users that barely use it, that pay for it and barely use it. And again, these companies, they model this out and they bank on that fact. So that's why, like, I do agree with Sheebert, if you put everybody on the network all the time, all your subscribers on the network all the time with unlimited usage, yeah, the network would fall for sure, because they don't model it for that. But you know, most likely that's not going to happen, right? So I think that's where my guess is Frontier is coming from.
You know, we're actually having a great conversation in our chat room right now. We've got Emily the Strange, who brings up the very good question of, okay, who's going to determine when it becomes too much? I mean, if we are going to count on self-regulating, at some point someone has to step in and say, you're not self-regulating, you're not acting in good faith, and therefore you must be penalized or you must no longer have the service. We've got Florida Vet, who is pointing out something very important, and I think this gets to the heart of the matter, which is most of us have the choice of one provider. Some of us don't even get one provider if you're talking about actual bandwidth, not DSL, but something better than DSL. I'm talking about fiber or cable or the improved DSL that can run real gigabit. When we've got this kind of situation, Cheebert, where most of us don't have a choice, where most of us look at an unending list of news stories about how we're getting shafted this way or that way, it becomes incredibly easy not to trust the company that's selling us service, even though we depend on that service. I could think of Comcast. Over the last few years, I've used Comcast. They've been very, very solid. They are the only one I will trust. I won't do DSL where I'm at, but I think Comcast is a horrible company. How do we solve for that? Because there has to be trust between the consumer and the company that's selling them goods if we expect the consumer to act in good faith.
You know, I don't see it happening. You know, it's always been an adversarial relationship between the consumer and the provider, especially when you've got a commodity that is shared like DSL or cable or fiber. I will point out, Triple Lead in the chat room states that 80% in the U.S. have two options. I certainly have that two options in Honolulu. Almost everywhere on the island of Oahu has at least two options. It's going to be interesting. You know, there's going to be competition. There's going to be one-upsmanship with the providers. And personally, I am of the firm belief that it should be competition driving this, not any kind of regulation. I guess this is going to be one of those time we'll see. You know, how will the market determine what becomes popular and what becomes the norm?
This is one of those rare cases where I think competition would help both the companies selling services and the consumers buying those services. It would give them not just choice, but it would also let them feel as if there is something self-regulating in the market. Comcast would not continue to charge you ridiculous amounts of money for bandwidth. They would not cap you if there was a clear other choice that I could go with, should I so decide. So, hey, FCC, make that happen. Let's go ahead and move on to the second enterprise bite, because along with unlimited access to data, we need to worry about what's going to happen with that data once it gets out in the open. Now, the FBI right now, you may not have heard about this, is seeking legislation that would allow them to get your browsing history without a warrant. Yeah, we've heard these kinds of stories before, and yes, they keep happening. Now, tech firms and privacy groups are fighting back right now against an amendment that would give the FBI a top-level view of what they call electronic communication transactional records, ECTRs, without the need for a warrant in terrorism and spy cases. This is the same sort of argument that we heard with the metadata. They're not actually getting anything that you sent out. They're only getting the list of places that maybe you visited. Now, ECTRs include everything from the website you visited to how long you browsed a particular page. And it's all up for grabs as part of an amendment to the Electronic Communications Privacy Act being considered this week by the Senate Judiciary Community. This legislation would expand the government's ability to collect data using a national security letter, remember those NSLs, which doesn't require a court order and typically includes a gag order saying the recipient cannot publicly acknowledge the letter. All right, before we get all crazy, let me throw this to Lou. Lou, is there anything wrong with this? The FBI seems to be saying, look, it's going to be part of an NSL, so there is some oversight, even if you think it's really lax oversight. They're saying it's going to be part of an active investigation, and they're saying we're not actually capturing the stream of data coming off of your computer or going to you. We're just looking at browsing history. Is this a problem?
There's services out there that can map your behavior and determine what type of person you are just by your browsing history. So say yes. I think it's invasion of privacy. I think at this point, you know, they're trying to find a loophole to circumvent some of the current restrictions that are out there, and I don't think it's something that we should allow them to do at this point. I think, yeah, it will make it easier for them, but you know, browser history can be important. I think that's why you know, companies, you know, like Facebook and these other companies, are the way that they advertise is based off of your history, using using machine learning to determine, you know, where you're going to go and what you're going to do next. So I don't think it's something that we should allow them to do without restrictive access.
All right, now Cheebert, let me go ahead and throw something over to you. We know that FBI Director James Comey has said that the amendment is needed because they need to fix a typo in the current eCPA that has, as he said, hindered the Bureau's ability to work in a, quote, very, very big and practical way, unquote. As such, amending the existing surveillance laws has become a top priority for the FBI, and this is the first part. So let me throw this to you. We know, because we've seen cases where the FBI has been able to track down a user's page history even without access to their browser. We know that during an active investigation, the FBI has powers that allow them to track a user even if they don't have access to his or her personal computer. So why? If they can already do it in an active investigation, when they have a warrant, when they have an NSL, why make an amendment for a power that they already seem to have?
I think it's more along the lines of jurisprudence laws. You know, this is more for Denise Howell to take a look at, but the reality is they can get to a lot of data now. So let's use Google Analytics as a good example. When I first got my first Google Analytics account, I was absolutely stunned at how much browser history it can harvest off the people hitting my websites. Now, it doesn't go and actually identify users by name or account or anything like that. And what the FBI is trying to do is they're trying to take that general information and tie it to individuals. And that's where we start getting into a lot of the issues with the ACLU and so forth and privacy laws. And that's, in my mind, the number one reason why they're trying to fix the eCPA rules so that they can legally tie browser history that can be harvested by different types of programs like what you see up on the screen and tie it to the individual. I think that's going to be the key. It's the tying of data, the browser information, to the individual. And that is the number one reason why that typo is being such a pain for the FBI. They can see it, but they can't legally tie it to the person.
Right, and this is actually one of the lesser publicized parts of this case, and that is the FBI knows that these tools exist. They've used them. However, what they've said, and I think Chibert has really explained it well, is they can't understand why they need a warrant for data that a third-party private company could come in and get just by purchasing a list, and that bothers them. But I think I'm okay with it bothering them, right? Because a third-party company purchasing some of my browsing history so they can sell me ads just doesn't seem the same as my government investigating me in a blanket fashion because they no longer need a warrant to look at my browsing data. Am I crazy, Lou?
No, I think you're 100% right. I think they should. They're not doing the work to figure it out, right? These other companies, and these other companies don't necessarily want to know everything about your life. They just want to know if they can sell you something. So I think it's a little bit less of an invasion versus what the FBI is trying to do. So I don't think you're crazy at all.
Well, all my other split personalities think I am. So go figure. Gentlemen, I'd love to continue, but unfortunately we need to move on because I want to get to our guest, Tim Titus, CTO. I'm going to call him Emperor of PathSolutions. He will be coming on to tell us about a better way to manage your network. But before we do that, let's go ahead and take a break to thank the sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Now, we know that behind every human achievement is an idea, and behind every idea is a team. Now, mapping the human genome, mastering 3D printing, building the next tool for space exploration, all of these things started as ideas that, with the help of a team, became earth-shattering realities. Now, what you need is a way to get that team together with that idea and then get out of the way. Give them all the tools that they need to succeed and let them succeed. And that's exactly what you can do with Atlassian. Now, we've been using Atlassian at TWiT as a vital piece of our creative process and infrastructure. Our engineering team uses Confluence to document equipment and work processes, to share results, and keep a team on the same page of each project. Everyone can see ideas and comment on a timeline, so not only do we know where the project is headed, but we know where it's been. With Jira, we get clear and concise task management that lets us see who was assigned what and when. It lets us manage vendors and organize our constantly growing pile of tasks, which would otherwise be overwhelming. Now, HipChat ties everything together, from event planning to DevOps to interdepartment communication, and they give us real-time IM and video on any of our devices, which is important because some of the team will be on phones, some will be on tablets, some will be on desktops, some will be laptops, some will be in the office, and some will be remote. Doesn't matter if you've got HipChat. And finally, Bitbucket lets us share, review, and improve our code in real time. Bottom line, Atlassian can turn your good team into a great team. From startups to 10,000-seat enterprises, Atlassian makes great ideas real. So here's what we want you to do. We want you to feed your next great idea. Visit Atlassian.com and see how Jira, Confluence, HipChat, and Bitbucket give your team everything you need to organize, discuss, and complete your shared work. Atlassian, helping teams everywhere team up to create what's next. Again, that's Atlassian.com, Atlassian.com. And we thank Atlassian for the support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Let's go ahead and welcome back to the show Mr. Timothy Titus. Tim Titus, he is the CTO at the Emperor at PathSolutions. Tim, it's so good to have you back.
As long as you don't call me the Emperor with no clothes, I'm okay with that.
No, I'm thinking this is more like Emperor, the Potish Emperor Dune. Never mind, geek thing. All right. My friend, we've had you on This Week in Enterprise Tech actually quite a few times. You were a natural fixture at Interop. We loved your tool. Our audience absolutely loved how easy and how fast it was to install and then find out all the information they needed to make decisions about managing their network. Now, I did want to take a step back because we haven't done a network management episode in a while and ask you, what do you think are the prime features, 2, 3, 4, whatever it might be, that every network administrator needs out of their management tool?
Well, I guess I'm gonna back up and say really is first of all, thank you for inviting me. But as far as number of key things that are needed is that there's a lot of folks that have basic monitoring covered. And I think that if you don't have a basic monitoring solution, there's a ton of solutions out there on the market, but you need to have that basic covered. Then you want to know about utilization. And I think a lot of those basic tools, they go further and they'll go into utilization. The thing that seemed to be missing that I got frustrated with is that troubleshooting. Somebody comes up to you and says, gee, 20 minutes ago, I had a poor quality VoIP phone call. Or 20 minutes ago, I was disconnected from the Oracle server. What happened? And so that ability to troubleshoot in the past, near past, whether it's 5 minutes ago or recent past, whether it's a couple of hours ago or maybe even 24 hours ago, that was the hard nut to crack. And so it was the sort of thing that I figured, gee, nobody's really solved this well. And after getting frustrated for a number of years working in the industry, I figured there needed to be a solution that people could find that could solve this problem, whether it happened 5 minutes ago, 20 minutes ago, 2 hours ago, and be able to give them a root cause, plain English answer of, hey, the problem's on this switch, it's on the trunk port of that switch, it's a problem with a cabling fault, go out and clean the fiber on that, or go out and look at it and say, whoa, Cat3 patch cord, this should have been thrown away a decade ago. So it's this sort of stuff that you're able to learn about what's going on in your network. So I'm going to really just say it's really just one feature that seems to be kind of missing from a lot of standard monitoring solutions is the ability to troubleshoot what happened in the past, where did the problem happen, why did it happen, so I can get it fixed.
Tim, this is actually a good time to talk about something that I think happens to a lot of management suites, which has not happened to PathSolutions, which is one of the things I've really enjoyed about your tool. And that is you typically start with an idea for a product that is pretty good. It gives you the information you need, and then they start adding features and more features and more features and more features. And pretty soon, what used to be a really sleek, a really fast management tool becomes this burdensome beast that tries to do everything in one window and just overloads the user. Why does that happen? Because I know you've seen that happen. That was one of the reasons why you started PathSolutions. Why does that seem to be the inevitable timeline of any network management solution out there?
They start with a concept and they don't think about the future. It's kind of like, I dare even say, Elon Musk, when he started with a car, you look and say, okay, he started with a car, but then he figured he'd build something that has so much future-proofing built into it where he can add on modules, capabilities, dual drive motors, extra batteries, all sorts of things that were far outside of consideration when you looked at the first car and you realize this was part of his original plan. Well, I think a lot of those solutions that were built, they were built with the original idea, but they didn't put together a plan of how far are they going to really take this? Where is this going to go in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? And so without that, they tend to have things cobbled on to the left side of the product, cobbled on to the right side of the product. Let's kind of add this over here. And then what you end up with is this kind of amoeba with a bunch of strange attachments that ends up looking kind of bizarre and ends up being this 800 megabyte download because it wasn't optimized from the from the past, optimized for the future.
Right, right. And unfortunately, I see that happen all too often, and to some software suites that I really enjoyed. Now, let's talk about the path approach, because the path approach has always been install easily, run quickly, diagnose almost immediately. And we've got Emily the Strange in the chat room who's saying that she does troubleshooting at her job, and it always equates to checking lots and lots of logs. That seems to be that's the natural path. So you have a problem, so you dig back through your huge accumulated list of logs, trying to narrow down what it was that caused that network event, what caused the glitch. That's not how it runs with PathSolutions.
Correct. In one sense, you're not going to have a log telling you that you had FCS errors and alignment errors on a trunk port of a switch 30 minutes ago. You're not going to have that sort of information log. That doesn't generate syslog type of data. It generates SNMP data, but the SNMP data that gets generated happens for a few short periods of time and then mysteriously disappears. And so this has really been the bane of network folks all along, is that you can have some little glitch happen at some point in time on the network, and let's say your network is 2,000 nodes or 5,000 nodes or maybe even 50,000 nodes, and these problems happen and then mysteriously disappear, and yet somebody comes up to you and says, you're responsible. I hold you to be responsible. Your management holds you to be responsible, yet you really don't know what's going on. And so I felt like that's kind of a big disconnect on the management side, is that you should know what's going on. You should have visibility into this environment. You paid for really nice switches and routers that have this information, whether it's Cisco, Brocade, Juniper, HP, whatever switches and routers you have, there's a wealth of information trapped up inside. We just figured we're going to go scoop up that information, bring it all back, no matter what make or model or manufacturer, and then analyze those error counters to be able to tell you that plain English answer of, hey, you've got a cabling fault out here, and it happened again at 2:35 in the afternoon. Or you've got a VLAN tagging issue over here, and you're dropping 12% of the packets. If you knew where the problems are and when they were happening and why they were happening, you'd spend 10 or 20 minutes, get the problem fixed, and then move on and say, that's not going to affect my users anymore. So log files is good for only certain things. The problem is that log files don't track all of the places you have packet loss, latency, or jitter occur in your environment. And so I figure if you're responsible for your environment, you ought to know what 100% of your environment is doing, all of those error counters, all of those ports, all of those links.
Okay, now you were talking about plain English. If you go to a Cheebert screen, because Cheebert's showing us a path interface that he's using right now, what are we seeing? So let's say I am that IT worker trying to figure out the plain English of this screen being presented to me. What am I seeing?
So this is what's called the Daily Network Weather Report. So this tells you kind of a daily snapshot of what's working and what's broken in your environment, so that every morning you come in, check your email, and say, hey, this network is either healthy or, hey, there's some issues. And if there's some issues, you can click into one of those interfaces. And what we do is we have a heuristics engine that analyzes the error counters to say, when you've got FCS errors and you have no alignment errors and you have no collisions, then more than likely what you have is a cabling problem. Go bring out your fluke meter and test the cabling. Or maybe it's as easy as just looking at the patch cord and saying, yikes, Cat 3, this shouldn't be in use anymore. Cut the ends off of this, throw it away, and get a brand new Cat 5 or Cat 6 patch cord. Problem will go away.
And ultimately, that's what we want our diagnostic tools to do, our network management tools to do. We want them not to just present information from the logs and all the capture devices, but we want them to be able to suggest possible actions. I mean, that's the holy grail of IT. So that
it's the analysis. You want something to say, gee, what does this mean? So I don't have to hire a CCIE to be able to research this. and have them come back and say, well, you should probably check the cabling or check the transceiver or check the NIC, or you want something that will say, lead me to the destination so I can spend 10 minutes and get this thing fixed and move on with my life.
All right, let's talk a little bit about how you've developed the product over the last couple of months since we've last seen you. When we first had PathSolutions on Twiet, you demoed the solution, and people were blown away. How small the download was, how quickly it installed, and then within a few minutes, it was able to discover all of the devices on my network, including some devices I didn't know I had. So automatically, that was cool. But you've added a couple of features. Can you talk a little bit about what you've done to that original Path experience to make it better?
Okay, so the download originally was 6 megabytes, and I got to apologize. We've bloated up to 7 megabytes now, so it's a larger download. Sorry. We still don't need .NET. You still don't need Java. You don't need a web server. You don't need a database. It's still a 12-minute deployment. All you need is SNMP read-only community strings. And so by minute 13, we're going to tell you more about what's going on in your environment than anything else. So it's the troubleshooting that's missing from a lot of the monitoring suites. What we have as a new feature is pretty amazing for folks who are running VoIP. So if you have a VoIP environment, doesn't make any difference whether it's Cisco VoIP or Avaya or ShoreTel, Mitel, Asterisk, whatever VoIP you have, more than likely, if you have an MPLS link, your provider has given you some routers that sit on your network. These are the customer premise routers. Now, these are owned by AT&T or owned by Verizon or owned by whatever your carrier is, Windstream, CenturyLink. The thing is, though, you can get SNMP read-only access to these routers. What we thought about is these routers have all of the queuing information about what's going on with your voice queue, what's going on with your video queue, your data queue. So if you're wondering, gee, why are we having voice quality problems? If you could look at those queues, you could determine, are they configured properly? Because sometimes they're not. Are you overutilizing your queues? Is there not enough bandwidth and you're actually dropping packets out of a queue? So we figured having visibility into this queue would be incredible because it allows you to understand whether they've been configured properly. So what we decided to do is make it so that still part of that 12-minute config, we're going to auto-detect that, hey, you've got an MPLS router, you have queues set up, we're going to show you your high-priority queue, your video queues, your low-priority queue, your FTP queues, whatever queues are set up, we'll be able to show you how those are performing so that you can immediately look at it and say, oh, looks like they have us capped at, we were just earlier talking about circuit caps, looks like the MPLS provider has us capped at 3 megs worth of voice traffic. And you might be thinking, gee, we asked for a specification of 6 megs of voice traffic. So you can look at that and determine if it's configured properly. And that's all automatic so that by minute 13, you can see this and say, okay, there's something broken here.
By minute 13. Normally that's by hour 13 as you look through your logs. Again, 13. We've got a good conversation in the chat room. Emily the Strange, who she says works for an undisclosed telco, so does this on a daily basis, wants to know if you've set up the solution to work just for applications, or can it do the full OSI? Can it tell me what layer there's an issue at?
So in one sense, we're going to rock the world as far as layers 1 through 3. You have any sort of cabling fault, any sort of data link layer problem, network layer problem, we're going to be able to see what's going on. We do have some application visibility because we can look at the queues and see what the queues are able to do, but we're not really focused on layers 4 through 7. So as far as being able to help solve VoIP problems, I think we're the best root cause solution for VoIP. If you're looking for applications of, hey, who's using who's doing a whole bunch of YouTube downloads, I think there are a bunch of other solutions that'll be more in tune with being able to look at sniff traffic, look at individual usage, that sort of stuff.
Emily the Strange also wants to know if it will work with things like ATM and token ring. If you still have that in your network, kudos to you.
Yeah, I'm going to say yes, it will still work with that because that information is going to be exposed via SNMP. Our SNMP core of our product actually goes back that far, so we've been around that long, so we should be able to pull that data and analyze that data as well.
Tim, we talked about some other suites and other tools that we've used and enjoyed. I had one that goes way, way back. What's Up Gold. That was one of the very first tools that I had. And there are people who will say that PathSolutions is essentially What's Up Gold. It was the same sort of promises. Install it quickly and find out quickly what's wrong with whatever it is that you're trying to troubleshoot. Would you consider yourself to be in the same field as What's Up Gold?
No, no. So What's Up Gold is a fantastic monitoring solution. It's going to be able to look at your servers, your disk space, your memory on those servers, applications. It's going to be able to tell you up-down status on links, on devices. The thing is, though, is you can't answer the question of what happened 20 minutes ago. You can't troubleshoot that type of problem. So again, if that user comes up and says, I'm not letting you go home until you solve what happened to that voice phone call that happened 2 hours ago, you're going to have to still be stuck logging into switches, logging into routers, checking interfaces, checking error counters, looking for buffer loss, all of those sorts of errors that we're going to collect automatically. And again, your switches and routers have all of this intelligence. We're just going to pick up those error counters, 18 different error counters on every interface of every connection in the entire infrastructure, put that all together with that heuristics engine so we can say, 20 minutes ago, that phone call was bad because this interface was dropping packets due to a VLAN tagging issue.
All right.
The troubleshooting that you don't get out of a monitoring solution. And I'd say, really, you can have a monitoring solution. It's going to do monitoring perfectly. It's really designed for that. It's not designed for troubleshooting, where that's really what we've been designed specifically for.
Right, exactly. And actually, that's one of the reasons why in the last episode that we had you on, I said I keep it on a USB drive. It's part of my toolkit that I'll go from station to station with, because sometimes I'll just plug it in, run it really quickly, and then have that aha moment. And let's talk about that aha moment, because that is actually one of your big pushes when you send out PR. The fact that you can install it so quickly and have that 13th minute experience of, oh, duh. What would you say is the biggest, most common duh that you get when people install your solution?
Well, sadly, it ends up being a little embarrassing, and this is the part that we have to be very careful about, is that people don't know their networks. You can deploy something that's going to pull all of these error counters, and by minute 13 say, you've got a bunch of half-duplex connections in your environment creating collisions. Collisions is something from 1990s. It shouldn't exist anymore. Yet people don't know what's going on their networks. So if you knew what was going on within the first hour of using our product, you'd get all of those collisions fixed so that you could proudly say, I run a collision-free environment. And at that point, you can say, okay, we found some cabling problems. We found some VLAN tagging problems. You might find an old printer that's still spitting out Apple Talk broadcasts. So it's these sort of things that really sadly tells me people just don't know their network to a level that they really ought to, so that they can run a crystal clear environment for voice, video, and data.
I will give that warning. If you do carry this in your toolkit, when you run it, make sure that your supervisor isn't in the room watching the screen with you, because it can be very embarrassing. Run it first, make sure it's not your fault, and then bring them into the room. Let me bring my co-host back in here, because Cheebert, you and I actually both use PathSolutions. Again, I have it on my troubleshooting kit. I think you have it running full-time in your network. What was the worst problem it diagnosed for you?
Well, we actually had two big ones. We have TotalView running on the production school network on dry land, but I also have it running for the Aloha Cabled Observatory, and it's extending down underwater 3 miles down. So it actually had two different major problems we found. One, on the dryland version, we actually found an awful lot of old HP lasers that still had 10 meg half duplex. Not real fun to find. We also found a Linux machine that, for some reason or another, the programmers looped everything through the loopback interface and was maxing out the LO. So it was actually at 100% utilization, which was driving us crazy. So that was a bummer. Now, on the underwater version, it was actually how we figured out where our problems were. We actually had a short in the cables. And what it was is someone had put together one of our underwater oil-filled cables incorrectly, and PathSolutions was indicating that possibly we had a crushed cable. Little did Tim know it was under 7,000 PSI worth of crushed cable. And so in order to keep that device working longer, we actually flipped it and changed it to 10 meg half duplex so that the transmit and receive wouldn't crosstalk to each other as much.
I had no idea that PathSolutions could detect crushed cables. That's pretty amazing. Lou, let me bring you into the conversation. I know that this is not your regular affair. You tend to exist on the higher level of the OSI scale. But network management is something that also affects people like you because you use networks and because you develop products that will run on networks. Have you ever seen a troubleshooting for one of your products that included, well, run this network suite so we can find out why the hardware is messed up?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've seen where people who are setting up, for instance, an on-prem to online type solution, like a hybrid solution, using a hypernet or something like that, they'll want to go through and troubleshoot the different layers within their network to figure out where they're having problems and latency issues. Because sometimes they'll blame it on the external pipe and so they basically run these tools to kind of see that. So this is an awesome tool, and it seems like it could almost bring out a lot of the different and bring to the surface a lot of the different issues that people are seeing in their network.
Right. Tim, let me get you back in here because, again, this is one of those things that we enjoy doing. I love having that aha moment the first time someone sees the solution run, which means we're going to have you back on so you can actually demo the new software, not just talk about it. But what are the advancements from PathSolutions that we're going to see over the next couple of months, couple of years? In other words, where do you see this solution going without becoming one of those networking monitoring suites that is too bloated?
the ugly behemoth.
The ugly,
So in one sense, something that we see is there's a ton of intelligence still left inside of switches and routers that it's left to be tapped. I think it's that we've built our core engine to the point where we can expand it out to have additional error counters trapped. We can have additional information picked up to help determine if there's loopbacks, additional configuration information. There's just so much intelligence trapped up inside these boxes that if you could get more information brought down, more heuristics added to that, eventually our goal, I mean, if you ask me where are we going to be in 10 years, our goal is to have this still remain a 7 meg download, still be a 12-minute deployment, and still be able to tell you in even further plain English, walk 20 paces out the door, turn left, go into that cubicle, and replace the patch cord because they've been backing over that with their desk chair 5 times a day. And so it's this sort of practical get problem solved is really what we're aiming to do, is make it so that as a senior level network engineer, you can sit and say, I can solve 200 problems in a day, whereas right now manually they might only be able to solve 2. Or you can have a junior level engineer solve problems that typically would be outside of their capability, and they'd need to say, gee, I need to go spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to get the CCIE in here to work on things. So it's all about improving that efficiency.
And actually, I think Chibert has footage of a pinched cable right now. So he's I think this is actually what happens to your data when you pinch it. So there you go. This is what happened when Chibert is sick and probably a little high on cold medicine. Yes, we like that.
So actually, what I can mention is in the Microsoft environment, we have some really neat things we're doing there. Is that we have a licensed unlimited call simulator to be able to simulate voice traffic, and we've added all of the Skype codecs to that call simulator so that you can simulate real-time audio, real-time video, G711, G729, but also all of the Skype siren codecs. That way we can end up emulating and seeing what does call quality look like in a Skype for Business environment.
Wow, that's actually something we would use at Twit. Now I need to make the new download.
I need to show you. I need to show you that module and where that works.
Yeah, wait, where is that module? I've never seen that module.
So it's in the call simulator. It's just the brand new one that came out just 3 months ago, and I got to check to see if you actually got the new one. But there's all of those codecs built in right there.
Well, Tim, I'd love to continue, but you know what? You have to leave the audience wanting more. We will have you back on This Week in Enterprise Tech because we do want you to do a real-time demo of the updated suite. They were blown away the last time. I'm sure they're going to love the new 7 megabyte download, although that might be hard. Now, if they wanted to find out more about PathSolutions, where would they go? Where would they download it? Where would they contract with it? How does it work?
Best thing, just go to www.pathsolutions.com and go to the bottom of the page, and there's a contact us. Or actually, on the right side. Sorry, on the right side. Well, here now on the bottom of the page. And you can either take a product tour or schedule a demo, and we'll show you how it works. And there are some funny videos. We did have some fun actors we hired for those videos that are right above your mouse there. So go ahead and view those. They're slightly funny for technology folks, but other than that, you can end up contacting us there, and we'll get you started with a demo.
There you have it, folks. Try the solution that both Chibert and I were blown away by, PathSolution. We have been speaking with Timothy Titus. He is the emperor of PathSolutions. That's my new phrase for CTOs. Timothy, it is always a pleasure. It's always an honor to see you. I see you every once in a while. In passing, as we go to these different conferences, it was nice to finally get you back on the show.
Appreciate the time, Padre.
Yeah. And folks, we appreciate you because you've done it again. You've wasted another hour listening to the best dang enterprise podcast in the universe. That's according to 9 out of 10 logs filled with SNMP requests. I want to thank my co-hosts for making this show what it is. I couldn't do This Week in Enterprise Tech without them, especially now that Chibert is my new producer. Chibert, could you tell the folks at home where you are at when you're not high on cough syrup?
Actually, I was just coming down on epinephrine.
Wow.
Lots of fun when you have a bad allergic reaction. But anyway, you're going to be able to see me in Tim's booth. I'm actually going to be talking about how I use PathSolutions Total View to diagnose problems on my underwater observatory. And I'm actually going to be speaking in his booth at Cisco Live. I can't remember the dates, but if you're a Cisco person, you probably know the dates of Cisco Live in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Yeah, and if you want to see Chibert,
July.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tim. What was that?
Second week of July.
Second week of July. If you are in Las Vegas, come on by. And you know what? If I have time, I will come down and we'll do a hangout. Let's go for some crawfish and crab, because Chibert, nothing kills you faster than crab, right?
Well, gee, thanks, Padre. Yeah. And you always offer to stab me with my EpiPen.
I have never been able to stab someone in the heart with a... Wait, no. EpiPens don't go in the heart, do they?
No.
Dang.
Sorry.
Okay, well...
That's atropine, dude.
A dream unfulfilled. Now, a man who will let me stab him in the heart with a what do they call those, Kevin? Not an EpiPen, adrenal pen, thing, is Mr. Lou Maresca, a senior lead at Microsoft. Lou, this episode has gone off the rails, my friend. But before it goes completely off the rails, could you please tell them where they can find you and your work?
Absolutely. You can always find me at Twitter at LouMM, and you can always find my work at crm.dynamics.com.
Fantastic. Gentlemen, thank you again for a fun show. And, of course, thanks to you, the person who comes back each and every single week to watch. We wouldn't have a show without your support. And we want to make it easier for you to get your enterprise fix. Just go to our show page at twit.tv/Twiet, T-W-I-E-T. There you'll find all of our back episodes along with our notes and any of the links for the stories that we've covered during the show. It's also the place where you can subscribe. There's a little drop-down menu that lets you get the feed. Do you want the audio version in your iPhone so you can listen to us on the way to work? You can do that. Do you want a video version on your tablet, your Android device, so that you can watch us on your break? You can do that. Do you want the high-definition video on your laptop, your desktop, your PC, or Mac so you can watch us on your big screen when you get home? You can do that. Again, just go to our show page at twit.tv/Twiet. Also, don't forget that you can find me on Twitter at twitter.com/PadreSJ. If you follow me, you'll be able to suggest topics and guests for future episodes of This Week in Enterprise Tech. In fact, I'd say a good 25% of our content has come directly from you, the viewers. Don't forget that we do this show every Friday, 1:30 p.m. Pacific time, live.twit.tv. If you watch us live, you can see the pre-show, the post-show, and everything that gets cut out of the finished version. It's part of the experiment that is Twit TV. And as long as you're experimenting, why not experiment with IRC? We've got a chat room at irc.twit.tv. There you will find some of the brightest folk that you will have in the Twit TV army, and you'll be able to participate in the show. If you've got a question, a comment, if you've got something that's been burning the inside of your brain and you want to get it on the stream, again, irc.twit.tv to participate. Finally, thanks to everyone here at the studio who makes this show possible. Of course, to Lisa and Leo for letting us do this week in Enterprise Tech, to Chibert, my super producer, and to my brand new permanent, probably, I doubt will be switched until the next time we need to make a schedule change, TD, Kevin. Now, Kevin, if you have a camera on yourself, we need to ask you this fine day, of all the creatures in the sea, what is the most dangerous?
The most dangerous is man when they are in the sea.
Oh, I'm sorry. The correct answer was cuttlefish, though we would have also taken starfish. And that starts the tradition of the Stump Kevin segments of our show. Folks, thank you very much for joining us. I'm Father Robert Ballecer, the digital Jesuit, just reminding you that if you want to know what's going on in the Enterprise, just keep quiet.